Okay, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. One of my most favorite, maybe my favorite conservation organization is the Macaw Society. And Dr. Don Brightsmith is with us today, and soon, hopefully, Gaby too. What do you call yourselves? Co-directors?
Directors there, that's a good word.
There you go. They do such cool stuff, mostly in South America, and all kinds of studies, past, present, and future. And so today we're just going to chat about some of those because, from my experience, having known Don for at least 20 years now, he's always on the forefront of interesting things. So, where should we start, Don? I don't know. There's so many good ones. Why don't
Well,
you
let's
go back to
see.
the beginning when you started studying the clay lick? A lot of new people don't know about that.
Okay, so we've the southeastern Peru is the Tambopata region has got clay lakes. They're the biggest in the world and some of the coolest spots to look at parrots. They are big walls of soil, basically, usually heavily clay soils, and the parrots will show up in the morning, they'll fly around and get all nervous, and then eventually they'll come down and start to eat. And you can get 100, couple hundred, 300 different individual parrots coming down and eating soil off of those clay lakes. And we've looked at them for a long time and learned all sorts of cool things. But the first one is that they really like the sodium. They're in there trying to get, it's not table salt, which is sodium chloride, but it's the sodium part of it, and they're eating it, and there's just hardly any sodium in that environment because it rains all the time and it just washes out. So these birds are desperate for it, and they're not the only ones. The We've seen ants getting it, and sphinx moths, and leaf hoppers, and tapirs, and deer, and rodents. They're all pretty desperate for sodium. So that's been a really cool thing to see.
And that's one of the building blocks of life, right? I mean, it's kind of a essential mineral. So, how long did it take for you to figure out that that was the reason? Hi, Gabby.
Oh, hey, Gabby. Let's see. It took us, well, when we went down, everybody was talking about toxicity and how these clays will bind up the toxins and it keeps them from basically getting sick. But the more we looked at it, the less sense it made. So it's kind of been a progressive thing. Because if you go to Costa Rica, you won't find any clay licks. There's no places where the parrots are going down and eating the soil. Uh, and it's because Costa Rica is right near the ocean, and there's lots of different ways they can get their sodium. But in southeastern Peru, the average plant food they eat has less sodium than lettuce. So it's just not doing it for their cravings. So
Hmm. Yeah. So, do you know any other place in South America where this is the same issue?
so it's mostly in the Western Amazon basin. So the closer you get to southeastern Peru, the more likely it is that you'll get birds on eating soil. So just across the border in Brazil, there's some. And recently, I've heard some people online talking about how it's natural for parrots to do this, etc. I bet you if you looked at the number of individual parrots that eat clay across the entire world, it would be a tiny, tiny percentage. Because most of them get enough sodium in other parts of their diet, and they don't have to eat this soil. And soil doesn't have a lot of nutritional value. Uh,
You used to have studies a long time ago, it seems like. How do you say it? Geography or what, when they eat dirt?
Geophagy.
Geophagy. So
Yeah.
a lot of birds do that, but you're saying less maybe than we thought?
Uh, so
Hmm.
there are a lot of registrations of individual species doing it, but when you look across the range of parrots, how many areas it's actually been recorded as them going to and having this major interaction with soil, it's pretty low.
Hmm.
And even scarlet macaws, they do it in southeastern Peru and maybe a little bit out from there, but across the whole rest of their range, there's no evidence that they're down there eating soil. Um, so it certainly isn't something of where if you say, oh, I'm not letting my parrots eat soil, it's like, well, most parrots on most days throughout most of the world are not going to be consuming soil. So
Hmm.
not a huge deal. And most of the diets, so if you're on a full vegetation-based diet and you're not providing, if you're not using any formulated foods or pellets and the like, then they might be a little bit low on sodium. But if they have any pellets in their diet, they're already getting enough sodium to be fine. So no need for extra. And actually, they'll tell you not to give your parrot salty snacks because they're likely to already be in a position where they've got enough sodium in the diet.
Is that what you believe also based on your?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
our bird has some pellets and a mixture of other things in their diets. Um, but we certainly don't provide any extra sodium, and we certainly don't provide any geophagy options.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to introduce Gabby? I bet a lot of people don't know her.
Hi, Dr. Gaby Vigo. What,
Eh,
how long have you been working in the parrot world?
like 20 years, but I'm still young.
Good, we need you. You're from Peru originally too, right? So
I
you
do, I do. I started studying Paris when I was in my college education thing. That was my thesis for college. But I was a parrot owner since I was like 4 or 5. So I was surrounded by parrots for a long, long time before I decided to study then.
hmm What did you do your PhD in?
It was
On.
nesting ecology and nesting behavior of the big macaws, of the scarlet macaws in Tambopata too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so a lot of studies with nests, with chicks, with macaw pairs, seeing what they do around the nest in the breeding season, in the non-breeding season, lots of different things.
You did an interesting study, I think it was last year, about multiple chicks and why some don't survive, because they usually lay three. I remember we were in Tambopata when the first set of three actually fledged. Everybody was so excited because it's so unusual. Yeah. So talk about that study and what you learned about the three eggs.
Should I jump to that, Dawn? What do you want to do?
Sure. So let's just as a little bit of introduction, since 1999, I and then Gabby and I have been working on the nests in southeastern Peru, looking at scarlet macaw breeding behavior. And over time, we found that they'll lay three, maybe four eggs, two, three, occasionally four will hatch, but number four, number three, and even sometimes number two will die of starvation. So you only will have one or two chicks that fledge. And that's kind of where I was when Gabby really got excited about it, looked at it for her undergrad thesis, and then moved into PhD. So Gabby said, "Can we move the chicks around and try and do this and try and do that?" And I said, "Not until you've got data to convince me that we know what we're doing."
Yeah,
So
and
how
it
did that
took me
work for you,
it
Gabby?
took me
Go ahead.
10 years, like 10 years for real, like calendar years. Because I studied the cheek growth first to try to understand if maybe those chicks were actually too small and not healthy enough to actually mate it. And then I start studying behavior around the nest, seeing if the parents were doing something different with them. It was like the early 2000. It was late 2000s, right? 2009 to 2010. So we start putting cameras in the nest to understand the behavior. And actually, the fact that the little ones die in the nest is not something that just happens in Tambopata. So when we were to conference talking with colleagues, it's something that happens in the whole order. So cockatoos, cockatiels, Amazon, Pioneers, all types of macaws, they do have the little ones die by starvation too. So it was not like the major discovery that oh they're dying. That cool part was why they are letting them die. Because we, especially with the work with the cameras, we saw the mom that arrived with a huge crop, regurgitate the first one, regurgitate the second one, regurgitate mom, and the third one was begging there, and the first one was like a giant balloon full of food, and mom was trying to feed that one more instead of feeding the third one that was begging next to it. So it was a no, so this is not a lack of food. So what is going on here? So at the time we were working with a botanist of phenology. He was studying phenology in the forest. Every month he was checking plants, trees, specifically the ones that we saw parrots and macaws eating, to try to understand the times of fruiting or flowering to correlate that. with breeding seasonality of the different species. So we start learning a lot. Like there's food in the forest. Obviously, mom and dad have food in their crops. So what's going on? So there were different set of data that we were collecting. We got very, very compulsively trying to get the timing with the chicks were hatching to try to get that first weight to see if actually maybe the little ones that died were actually too tiny, too skinny, not healthy enough to survive. But at the end, that PhD was really like, so we were two different theories and different things. It was sad to see so many chicks die, especially at the end of the 10 years, because we were discovering the little things and we were getting to the point that we could save this one, we could save the other one. But then we needed to get research permits for the government. Peru is very, very strict in manipulating wildlife. Macaulay scarlet macaulay is one. So it was a whole set of different steps. We managed to get the permission to start doing different techniques, but Don was not convinced about it. So it was like, oh my God, what else do we need?
He's a tough guy, huh?
So finally, she came to me and she goes, okay, we've looked at the data. It looks like the bigger the distance in age between the first one and the second one is what determines whether the second one will actually be fed and survive. She came to me with a hypothesis saying if we move chicks around and we make it so that the chicks are almost exactly the same age, they'll survive. So that was the first thing we looked at. And so Gabby started pulling him out, giving him some food, and then putting him back, shuffling him back together to make broods that were about the same age. Did it work for you, Gabby?
It did work. So it was such a huge learning curve, because we didn't know at the beginning of the season how many chicks we would have to play with, because some play with in quotes, right? Because some seasons we just have a few chicks, a few birds with 3 chicks, and that was the case that I made with the government. So the third chicks and the fourth chicks, they always die. So it's not going to matter for nature if I pull those ones and I try to make them live. It's not going to have a negative.
Because they're going to die anyway, right?
It's going to die anyway. So that was the first step. Try to do something with the third ones. We had some experience from the past. Done in previous seasons, he and the team, they fed the third ones in the nest, trying to push them back, but it didn't work. So they fed them 3 times, 4 times, sometimes even 5 times, but it couldn't. So we knew that we couldn't get them to that stage because we knew that we couldn't make them survive. So we needed to get them as soon as they hatch. So as soon as they hatch, we were removing. That part was stressful because the breeding season was rolling. So we didn't know if we will have a place to put them back. So at some point it was, so we have 4 third chicks here in the house. We don't know if we're going to have chicks that will have the right age to put them back. Super stressful. The team was like 20 something people, vets, volunteers. Like the team that was feeding the chicks, it was like having 5 grumpy moms with newborns in the house. Everybody was biting everybody because nobody was actually sleeping. Like feeding the chicks every 2 hours. The first year was hard because we noticed that we didn't have the expertise to actually make them survive. So the tiny hatchlings, and imagine this is rainforest conditions, right? It was a field, a lodge actually. We didn't have electricity 24/7. So we had electricity just a few hours. We needed to make the brooder in quotes work with a car battery. And it was a whole thing. So we wait until the chicks had the eyes open, like 1 day, 2 days after, and then we place them with the chicks that were kind of like the same. They look kind of the same. So we call it the same developmental stage. So they were not exactly the same age, but when you saw them, you could see, okay, yeah, they look similar. And since like for mom and dad, that was enough. So I had different experimenting with different groups. So placing the foster as a first chick, as the big boy, or as the young one in the brood. We even create a triple brood, and we learn a lot. And that was the key part, was that they need to be in the same stage of development, and they need to look pretty much very, very similar.
So it's not time, it's weight. The bottom line was it was weight that made the difference to the parents.
It's kind of age. Well, one way to say it, one of the coolest things she did was when she had two that were too far apart, like say they were 4 days apart, and that we knew the second one was going to die. You could pull one of them out, raise it up in the house, and when both of them had their eyes open, let's say, so instead of being 1 and 5 days old, they were
like 20 and
21,
21. Yeah.
21 and 25 days old. At 21 and 25 days old, they were similar enough in their developmental stage and their needs. It's basically, are their needs similar? So with their needs being similar at age 21 and 25, the parents would raise their two chicks all the way up, the exact same chicks that they had before, except instead of being 1 and 5 days old, now they were 21 and 25 days old, and the parents could handle them both with no problem. And we didn't even detect that they were overly stressed out or anything.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes you used foster parents,
right.
right?
So we had, I think there were, Gaby, by the end of the dissertation, we had like 5 different conditions. One time we had a time when the egg just, all the eggs were predated, but we had a fake egg in there because we were doing some other work, and the parents kept incubating the fake egg. So Gaby took a like 4-day-old chick or something, and one day just popped it in. And what happened there, Gaby?
Yeah, that was a really cool case. So we had 2 chicks in one nest. The second one was like maybe 4 days younger, and it was in that little breach before it starts looking really bad. And it was like, yeah, we have this other nest with this robo egg. So what if we put it there? So the little guy is gonna die anyhow, so let's do it. And the nest was predated, so the real eggs got predated before. And the robo egg is a plastic thing. It even had bites around. So mama knew that that was a plastic thing. So we took it out, we put the chick. Mom went inside, we had cameras, like 10 people were watching, like, oh, the little screen. And mom went inside, went down, touched the chick like 2 times, and she was, all right. And went out, that came and checked inside. And that was super even funny, because he went inside and then outside, like, and then again, and he did that 3 times, and he was like, and then he disappeared for 2 hours, 3 hours, and came back with a giant cup, and he started feeding the chick, and he fed mama, mama fed the chick, and that was a perfect rainbow chick story. That chick was fat the whole time. He was shiny, like not even a single parasites or anything. So he was like the baby that they really wanted.
The rainbow baby. On my screen now is a robo egg. I don't know if Gaby, if you've seen this picture, but that's the egg in Angel, which is so ridiculously tiny that nobody understands why it's so tiny. And it's being incubated by a scarlet macaw, so it's not like an Amazon egg or something. But they're supposed to be the size of the robo egg, but instead it's this absolutely ridiculously tiny thing. But that's, just so you know, that's what a robo egg looks like.
You mentioned predators. That's an interesting topic too. I remember being in Brazil together with you, Don, and Neva let you climb a nest, a hyacinth nest, and they were gone. I think it was bats.
No, it wasn't. It was worse than that. I climb up. It's the first time I've ever climbed that system. First time I've ever climbed in Brazil. First time I've ever climbed a hyacinth nest. I get up to the top. I look down in the nest and I'm like, that chick looks really weird, but it's a different species. Maybe it's just different. So I'm supposed to take it out and send it down. So I kind of reach down in, I pick it up. It's dead. It's like a Monty Python dead parrot. And I'm like, Neva, what? It's dead. She's like, what? And it was perfect. There was no problem with the bird, but I put it in whatever bucket, sent it down. It's like, it's dead. I'm like, yeah, it's dead.
I think, didn't you decide it was bats or something? I can't remember.
I know that one. I didn't. I had no idea. I walked away with no idea because it was perfect. It was in perfect shape, and it was the only chick. It wasn't like, it had starved or anything.
Yeah. What are the biggest predators? I remember in your earliest papers, you used to say parrots are preyed upon more than any other species, but they get eaten the least because they're so smart.
So, I used to talk about them being what I call kind of predator proof, which is they spend their lives in such a way that have very low predation rates. They spend their lives way up high in the trees. When they go down to the clay lakes, they're surrounded by other friends. It's very rare I mean, we've seen predation by ocelots and hawk eagles, and eagles around clay lakes, but it's super rare for all the time we've been there. Um, so they do really well. And then, Gabby, what was your PhD percentage for predation? Do you remember?
In us was just 8%, but
Eight,
we were an
eight.
outlier in the whole literature review that I did. So in Amazon's the predation percentage is like 30% is high. But in
Wow.
us it was really low, and we noticed, oh look. So those are the two chicks that the story that I was telling. So the Tigris
Oh,
2
okay.
is the one that was not doing good. You can tell there that it's all dehydrated. The color is not right. And then when we move it in just one day, the new mama managed to make it look much better.
And
And
look, he's
then
even smiling.
yeah,
Adorable.
and then it was just perfect. It was, look at that for a wild chick is super clean. Like they are not usually that clean and shiny like that one. So it was, yeah. And then it
He's
was a
not
cool,
even dirty. You're right. He doesn't even have any
yeah.
dirt marks on him at all.
Not even the little toes, nothing. He was like, mom was preening him or her like the whole time. He was like, oh, my baby, oh, my baby, oh, my baby.
And this is a baby that would have died if you hadn't
Right.
intervened. Okay, just to be clear.
That was one of her
Yeah.
for us fostering birds.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was for sure. The little guy was not doing good. Yeah, so predators, the one that we have ID pretty much in different species in different areas are forest falcons. So
Are
forest
what?
falcons,
Falcon?
Forest falcon, collared forest falcon, and others.
Forest falcon. Okay.
so it's pretty much, is it the size of a macodon, but without the tail?
I think it weighs a little less. And the problem is they're cavity nesters, so they like exploring cavities around breeding season. And if they find a snack, baby parrots inside the nest, they'll often take them. And we have a publication with people in Guatemala. And just now on the Forum Siticorum came through a bunch of people talking about it because there's video of forest falcons hanging out at yellow-naped Amazon nests.
Mm-hmm.
So
Most of the people listening today probably don't know what Forum is. It's a group that Don and Gabby started to bring conservation scientists and operators together to share stories and ask questions, which is great.
and I know we have at least two members of Forum who are on here right now, one out of Costa Rica and one out of Venezuela.
Great.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Is that
wonderful.
the predation is a whole challenge because in the case of the falcon, they actually take the prey. So you pretty much arrive and there's nothing. Sometimes there's just one. Sometimes if there are tiny ones, seems like they come back. Some bigger eagles, they actually come back, and you see them in the nest like the day before or the afternoon after. And that is why we ID them, right? So the chick is not there. Let's just do a nest observation for the rest of the night, and the eagle comes back. So they take the prey too.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a mammal. It's called kinkajou. You see
It's
that?
a relative of the raccoon, but it's super arboreal. It looks like
Can
a
you
little night
say the
monkey
name
thing.
again so people understand?
Kinkajou.
Kinkajou.
Kinkajou. Maybe you can Google it, John, to show them a
Yeah,
picture.
I'll got it.
Yeah, so there is, in the description of the species, supposed to be, the diet is supposed to be mainly just plants, fruits, eats flowers, but we've seen the species in different breeding seasons inside the nests. Right after the eggs suspiciously disappear, little chicks too. So they use the cavities to sleep. We have found them in different years just sleeping. You open up the door of the nest box and there's a guy there sleeping. But we know that they eat eggs for sure and small chicks. Then there's another mammal, the tyra, which is like a weasel. That's the closest.
A big giant weasel, like a dog-sized weasel.
But is very arboreal, really good climber, and he eats big. He eats big mammals, big chicks, and there's different ways. So when you find the body, it's kind of like a crime scene that we try to collect different information to try to understand. So the big tropical weasel, the tyra, they pull the head and the part, so you find parts of chicks in the nest. The falcons, they take them out. The owls eat them there, but they open up the body. So there's different ways that there's been so many years, right? In 25 years, just comparing the different data that we have. Sometimes, at least 2 times, we've seen the tyras, a tropical weasel, coming out the nest cavities carrying part of a chick. So they actually remove the head first and take the rest with them. So it's really sad, especially if you are the climber. Because
in Brazil last year, I noticed they were putting kind of like those things we do for squirrel prevention around some of the trees to keep things from climbing up the trees. Do you all do that in Peru?
We haven't done it much, but it's a very in part because we only had normally a 6% predation rate. So our predation rates were really low. And most of the time, once you had chicks that were a few weeks old, you pretty much knew they were going to fledge. But it's variable depending on where you are. And I know that where there's problems, they'll put it's flashing basically.
Flashing, right.
And it's just too slippery for most of the mammals to crawl over. But you also have to have an isolated tree, or you have to somehow have the nest isolated.
So they can't jump across.
Right, because in Peru where we work, all the canopy is connected, so they just go from
Right.
one to the other, and then you would have to find a way to put the flashing so that they can't drop down. And if it's a nest box, they'll just drop onto the top of it anyhow, so it gets more complicated.
Yeah, well, we along the different seasons, we notice that the ones that have less predation are the ones that have difficult access, even so that it needs to be just one entrance. So if mom or dad are inside, they're able to defend it. So if the predator arrives and there's just one and nobody else can sneak out the other way, that's the best. Anything around it, like no branches, no, pretty much nothing. So the predator cannot have an easy access either. So it's pretty much how they are able to defend from anybody coming inside. And that anybody includes our macaws, because they fight per nest a lot too.
I think there was a video one time of a cat of some kind taking the adult macaws off the clay lick. It was a really sad video, actually.
Those are usually the ocelots.
Ocelot.
And ocelots will kind of get up near the top of the clay lick and then just sit there for hours and kind of then jump down and take. Actually, BBC tried really hard. There was one that was apparently in Peru hunting at one of the other clay licks, and BBC spent like a month there and got nothing because they never
marked parrots, right?
They never had.
And it is quite unusual. We haven't, like, I think there's like 2 records in 20 years or something, and they were really close in time. So it seems like even it was the same cat that just learned how to do it. So it's not common. We know they're intelligent and everything, but yeah, that guy was not. It's they. But we don't have reports of cats predating chicks inside. We have 2 reports of adults that we found the bodies of the adults inside the nests, and it was not in a good shape to actually understand what happened. If the bird arrived injured and just died inside the nest, or what happened. But mainly it's chick predation. And we noticed that, especially in our case, the the macaws are big, they are very aggressive. So it's pretty much if somebody, if mom or dad are in the nest, that's what is gonna keep the chick safe.
Right.
So we notice that there's pairs that we have a theory that they are young pairs, that they are not in the nest as often as the older pairs, and those are the ones that have more predation. So if somebody's there, if somebody's around, they are gonna fight the I don't know if they are gonna fight the predator or the predator is just not gonna consider it worth it with such a big red dragon there.
Right. I think you all also kind of came to understand that sometimes the reason they don't live as long as you originally thought is because they kill each other. I remember when we were there in 2018, Don was like, "Oh my gosh, they're fighting over nests and mates a whole lot more than we thought." Because I was looking for some of our old friends who had been there years before and they were gone, and
Yeah, the fights are very, very intense. They are
yes,
bad, and
right,
they go for the faces. So
right,
when they fight in the air like that movie Matrix, so they grab their foot and they just flap, flap, flap and free fall, and they keep fighting their white area in the face. At least once or twice we've seen the pair that lose
yeah,
the nest just there like with
yeah,
so many bites in the face that is, oh my goodness, how are you
yeah.
gonna deal with the infection
Bonded
of
pairs
all
are very
that?
determined. Yeah.
Yeah, and we even have one of the macaws that got reintroduced in the early 90s, that she came back to the house with a massive eye infection, and she actually lost that eye, and she managed to live at least 4 or 5 more years, but she had everything but without the eye situation. So in that circumstance, your chances to get predated is super high.
Right. Right.
So since like the big, it's not predator, right? The big reason is like they actually bite each
Right.
other.
I feel like Amazons do the same thing, and it's anecdotal here, but male Amazons and I do not get along, and I feel like they always want to attack me, and they come for the face. So is that what they
Mhm.
do? Amazons do the same in the wild too? They go for the face?
So we haven't studied as many Amazon nests, but one of the things that's really so Amazons are much more cryptic around their nests. So they spend a lot of they'll sneak into the nest and go down and they're very quiet. People with good eyes, like Ernesto's guys in northern Mexico, can find the nest pretty easily. But macaws do exactly the opposite. And their behavior suggests to us that this fight for nests is really important because even when so if there's a pair at their nest and another pair flies by, a lot of times they'll sit up on the top of the nest and raise their wings up and call back to them, basically saying, "This is our nest, just keep going, leave us alone." And that type of behavior to me says predation isn't a big problem because it doesn't matter that much if somebody else knows where my nest is. What's most important is telling others of my own species and the other competing species that this is my nest and stay away.
Right.
So the fact that we actually found more nest failures and problems and chick loss from nest fights than from predation matches really well with the behavior of these birds that we
Yeah.
saw.
Which is why we recommend not teaching eagle anymore. One of those old things we used to teach macaws, because basically it's a very defensive posture, which is not always a good thing in captivity.
So you can see this guy here is involved in that. And then here we've got again that those wings out make them look big and
Big.
scary. I mean,
Right.
even when you're human sized. So
Yeah, it's quite scary when you are climbing right next to that nest box, and one of them is waiting for you in that eagle pose,
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, yeah, I know you're big. Yeah.
Yeah. We all know what that beak feels like.
so Gabby, what's predation like this year? Is it different?
Yeah, this year is really, yeah, it's one of those years that when you think you know something, and all of a sudden you realize that you know very little. So so those are the pictures of the injuries of the nest fights. So
Mhm.
the
This was
first
a
one,
chick, right? Go ahead,
that's
Gabby.
a chick.
Mhm.
That's a female that actually managed to defend the nest. We thought she will lose that eye, but she managed to recover that one. But she was kind of half blind half of the season. She was a very good mom, and that was the male. And those are kind of like that less intense injuries. At least once I thought that half of the white part was hanging like a piece of fabric, outside the face. And it was, oh God, like good luck. And we don't know if that one survived or not.
Mm.
That was one of the sad cases. At least twice the chicks die in the nests. In one, mama took the chick out and just flew, took it out. And in another one, the pair that took over the nest, they went inside and they just execute the chicks.
Mm.
And we had people watching that time. So it was the calls on the radio, something is happening, they're screaming, something is happening. And when we climb up, it was like crime scene, like, and the female macaw had blood in the face, and it was like, ugh. So it is a thing in them. They need to take the nest. Especially when they know that there's small chicks, they know that the nest is good enough and worth enough to fight for. And when the chicks are about to fly, they are 100% sure that that cavity, if I'm good enough defending it from predators and from other macaws, it has everything, right? Humidity, temperature, everything is there. So I want that one.
Mhm.
And yeah,
And
so
what's incredible about it is they'll take over a nest in January or February and not even attempt to lay eggs. They are planning on laying eggs in November, but they will fight for and take over a nest in
in
February,
February.
January. So it's months and months and months of foresight. And then they
Planners,
defend it and then they use it next year. So it's not just like a gut reaction. They're like, I
right?
need a nest for
They're thinking
next year.
ahead. They're clearly
And they're working maybe 10 months ahead, which is incredible to think about
yeah,
that level of planning.
planning, which kind of segues into that one of those cool studies you guys are doing about monogamy. Do you think that that some of those changes in partners has to do with taking over or fighting for a nest, or is it because they just lost a partner and go find a new one? Any theories on that? They fight for a new spouse, or they lost a
So
spouse and need to
our
find
our
one?
favorite story was the double divorce homicide, um, where we had two pairs of which both members of one pair were, no, three of the four birds were marked, and
Were
there
what?
were three
Marked?
of the ringed, had bands on.
Oh, okay.
So we had two pairs, and those two pairs started fighting. We don't know if they started fighting over a nest or if it was about partners, but they fought for a while. At some point, an adult macaw was found dead. I wasn't on site at the time, but an adult macaw was found dead during this fight, which we never find dead adult macaws in that forest. And when it was all done, two of the banded birds actually formed a pair, and the one banded male that we had known about was still alive and was confirmed as being alive. So it absolutely was divorce. Somebody got killed in the whole thing. And what was strange was both pairs had been successful nesting the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had this big divorce and blow up. The next year, the new pair that we tracked was unsuccessful at nesting, but then they figured it out and they ended up becoming a very successful and very scary dominant pair um, going forward. So,
Wow. Drama.
Yeah. Drama, whole drama. The Makota die was part of one of those matrix fights in the air that I mentioned before, and he just slammed the ground and he just died. But the female and the ex-husband, they were quite successful before. He was a good male. He was not aggressive. He he actually, the thing is that she was one of the reintroduced birds that used to come to the house,
Mhm.
and she actually showed him how to come down. He didn't like it much. You could see like the super skinny, like, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here, but she's asking me to. So he did that for 2, 3 years. So the first, very, very first radio caller that we test was in that male, poor thing. That because he was white, he was there, it was the first one that we trapped. And he came back even with that, poor thing. So he was a loyal husband, but he was not as aggressive as the new husband. The new husband was the
A
trouble.
bully.
Yeah, like when we were climbing the nest, like years after when they were actually breeding successfully, she was a bitch. She was really mean, but she jumped in your face and things like that. But he discovered that the rope in the nest passed and comes down. So he was trying to cut the other side, that is like 20 meters from you. So you were fighting with one here and he was in the other side. Don't worry, love. I'm going to cut here. So the two of them were trouble. They were so ferocious that they managed to defend three nests at the same time. So they were nesting in this one.
Wow.
They were using the one that was closer, kind of like as a bathroom facility. She went down, perched on top of the next box, and just poop, and then come back, and then the other one. And they were so intense that everybody else that could try to check the other two, they were no, this is mine. But you don't
Did
have
anybody
anything.
get any photos or video of that fight?
It's tricky with the whole vegetations and everything is tricky. And at the beginning, especially the divorce one, we didn't know much about nest fights yet.
Mhm.
So we
Right.
didn't know what it was that important. We didn't know that divorce was even a possibility. It was like what's going
Right.
on, what's going on. So the picture that Dawn showed, it took us like years to get just one good shot of the
Well,
nest fight to
you
kind of.
recently put a big dent in that. We assumed they were all monogamous, and now we know there's a lot of
So what we're
stuff
starting to
going
look
on.
at
Yeah.
now is we've got samples from a lot of different birds. So again, Gabby has a great eye, way better than I do for identifying individuals, and she knows that over the years we've had some pairs that have moved from point A to point B. We've had some pairs that have broken up and had new males, but it's really hard for us to publish based on her incredible eye. So what we're starting to do now is we've got a geneticist from Brazil we're working with who's helping us analyze these samples. And what we're looking at now is using all of these samples, we look at the babies that we have and whatever adults. And with babies, you can infer who the adults were. So we're looking to see how often is it that they either change to a new nest. So the same pair moves to a new nest, and maybe we can figure out why it is that they decide to move to a new nest. How often is it that they change mates? Are they switching up mates and why? And then does that other mate appear somewhere else in the population? And then the biggie, are they really faithful? Are they really monogamous? And are we finding chicks in the same nest that have different fathers, for example, suggesting that mom went and snuck around? Or are we finding chicks that are completely unrelated to anybody else in the nest, which suggests that you had what we call egg dumping,
Mm.
where a mom just shows up, throws an egg, and we're almost sure we've had egg dumping because halfway through incubation, no, or we already have chicks, et cetera, and all of a sudden an egg appears, and we're like, mom is hormonally not there to she's not in that mode, so she wouldn't be just laying another egg. So somebody got dumped, but we don't know if they ever dumped them at the time when the timing is right for them to actually hatch. And then if they hatch, are they being raised up? So
When you say
the
dump, you mean they go in the nest, lay the egg. They don't carry the egg. They go in the nest and lay the egg.
right. So mom,
Uh-huh.
an extra female who's hanging
Uh-huh.
around watching the nest, waits till nobody's there, sneaks in, lays an egg, goes, and never looks back.
Yeah. Didn't want
Uh,
to be a mom. Yeah.
well,
Maybe
or
that's part
Too
of the
young.
nest fights too, because one of the stages in the nest fights is that the takeover pair finally goes inside the nest. So maybe we have no idea if that pair, in which stage they are. Maybe she already has eggs and she needs to
Mhm.
lay them somewhere.
Mhm.
right.
And
So
as part of the fight, she goes inside, put the egg, and then they keep fighting. And the pair that is actually nesting managed to get rid of them, but that
Right.
egg is there.
Is the
I-
DNA showing this now that you're starting to test?
So we have a tiny little set of results that Georgiola produced a while ago that we're just starting to look at. And that is suggesting that we have some birds who have switched nests and some birds who have switched mates, but we don't have any egg dumping yet or any infidelity.
Mhm.
But we only have a tiny little sample size.
Is George coming from Australia to do the testing, or is he doing the testing in?
So we're working with a Brazilian right now. Some of the
Uh-huh.
George's stuff is from his old
yeah, we
research
Got
are,
it.
when
we
he
are, yeah, it's a huge marathon, the whole genetics. So is the collecting
Mhm.
samples, George was a big part of it. He was
Right.
really good trapping the adults in the nest. And it's super important to have at least mom or dad. So we
Mhm.
have a few moms, less dads, and then so that's the first stage. Then is moving the samples out of Peru, either to Brazil or Texas or Australia to analyze them. So our
Mhm.
colleague Renato Caparros, he's the one that is leading the part of analyzing. And then is everything becomes a computer set of data, massive amount of
Right.
information. And George and Renato are gonna do that part. Renato
Great.
mostly, but George has a big part of that part. So the project is in different stages. So we
Understood.
have collected this season. Then there's a whole bunch of 4 years waiting in Lima to be exported. There's a bunch of for 10 years that is actually finally a computer data set. So all the samples were run and they are being
How do you
processing
get a
them.
male? A male doesn't seem to stay in the nest. So how do you get the dad's DNA? That must be the
Yes.
hardest, right?
Yeah, you pray a lot. So we have yeah.
Or you wait till they grow up and you have their DNA from when they're chicks and then later.
It is tricky
so
because you
I,
need to trap at the time when the chicks thermoregulate because you cannot put them in risk. And that is the time in which that is not there that much because they're moving around getting food back and forth. Don, you were about to say something.
yeah, so when we had to do it to put on radio, when we put on satellite telemetry collars, I literally was in full camouflage, laying on the ground directly underneath the nest with a radio, waiting till the male came back. And when we knew we had the male and he went into the nest, I'd make the call or I'd pull. Actually, I was the puller. I pulled a lever that closed the nest box
Oh,
and then we sent somebody
hmm.
up. So it
Wow.
was hard and it had to be late in the season because you can't do it with little babies or they don't do well. So what wasn't until they were 30, 40, 50 days old. And when dad would go in, we'd close it and then they'd go up and grab out, somebody would go up and grab out
That's
the
amazing.
dad.
Yeah, it
Can't wait.
actually, I think if I want to show, usually it takes from 15 to 20 people to get a sample of one of the adults. So you need people watching the nest, you need the people activating the trap, you need that team that supports the vet, from every single minimal detail, right? The one that takes pictures, the one that takes the
Right.
time, the one to make sure everything runs.
A lot of work.
And
Yeah.
we have like 10 minutes to get everything from the time you close the trap to the time you send that and you have
Right.
somebody hanging, so it's like, and usually it's pretty much when you score the last goal of the season, the one that makes you champion, so it's like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Maybe we can switch to my favorite topic, food. Don knows how passionate I am about nutrition. I've followed him around the forest many times going, do they eat this? Do they eat that? Tell us what we need to know about what birds eat.
Okay. I'll just throw this up and leave it on in the background while as we finish up the genetics
Oh,
part.
okay. That
We
looks
are
important. Let's do
doing a
that.
little bit of a, actually, that's not what we're looking for. Here we go. Okay. So we do have a little campaign that we're doing if anyone's interested in taking a look at GoFundMe.
Great study to
Uh,
support.
yeah.
Yes.
And there's more information about it. They're talking about Renato and stuff, but we'll go into food. So the food aspects are interesting, and Gabby has put a lot of work into what we call foraging walks, which is getting people back out there to really try and look again at what the birds are eating. And at this point, it's an important part of what we're looking at because we have data from, let's say, 15 years ago as to what they're eating. We have data from 15 years ago about how the forest is behaving and when different plants are fruiting and flowering. And now what we're trying to do is look at today, and look at two levels. Is it the weather in the previous year that's changing some of these things, or do we think that it's a bigger kind of over time a real change in the climate that's making more permanent shifts? So it's challenging. It's going to be tough for us to pull it off completely, but I think the our refocusing back on some of these issues may give us some really good insight, in part because it's going to force us to look back over the 20 years we've got, plus these 2 or 3 new years, and look at how the weather has behaved and how it's changed, because we should be able to, if in hotter years their nesting is later and there's less food or these things, we should be able to roll it forward and say, okay, if climate change continues in the directions we suspect it will, then that will help us understand what's going on with the macaws. And what I'm worried about is macaws breed right during the peak of fruiting in our forests. So we have this big broad fruiting peak that runs from, let's say, maybe late November, December in through February. But what we're concerned about is if the climate continues to change, the amount of the peak, the size of that peak may get smaller, and there may not be enough time to pull off nests of chicks. But then we have this year. This year, there the the spread of egg laying has been incredible. We have chicks that have just fledged, and we have eggs that have just hatched.
Wow.
And we've had late clutches before, but usually nobody really, they don't get incubated right. The parents kind of get ahormonal and give up. Um, but this year,
Really late right now, right? I mean, that's
with
Yeah,
super
these,
late.
especially if you take into account that the peak of food availability is about to drop, right, Don?
Right.
theoretically, it's
Theoretically.
the food should already be dropping off really badly, and we have chicks hatching. So what we need to see is what Gustavo, our plant guy, is finding. Is this really a year where the food availability peak, instead of like shrinking like we're expecting, has it just gone crazy and gotten super broad and wide, which would allow these birds to go across so many different years? And we don't know. It was a mild La Nina this year, which we suspect that Nino and Nina are a big important part of how these forests behave, even though it's not as drastic as like California or the coast of Peru. We think that there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, there's El Nino, like coastal Nino right now that is pretty much raining in the areas in the coast of Peru where it's not supposed to rain and is flooding many towns there. And in the dry season, it was very dry. And but usually with our botanist, Gustavo Martinez, we have this little game at the beginning of the breeding season, October, November. So how much food do we have? Lots. So are we gonna have third and fourth chicks? Yes, no. Or then it's gonna be a good season, it's gonna be a bad season. So this year we said it's gonna be a good season. But then at the beginning, December, we didn't have much. There were way too many nest fights. Like lots of eggs cracked, which is the main indicator that I know that they were just jumping on top of the nest, trying to defend the nest box. And we had, instead of 12, 13, 14 chicks, we had 5, 6, and it was so wow, it's going to be a really bad season. And then a second round of eggs, more nest fights, a third round of eggs, more chicks in February, and the forest still has food. So I don't know what's going on. And I
Right.
don't know if those chicks are gonna fledge. They are still young. And
So I just want to point out how incredible it is that Gabby Vigo, after studying the same population with the nests in it, out for 20 years, is sitting here right now saying, I have no idea what's going to happen in the 21st year of
Right.
studying these birds. And she wasn't saying it to be dramatic. I mean, we're going back and forth. We were there in December. She's in contact with the field crew every day, and we're sending them back up to try and understand things. We just had a natural three chick brood fledge, which wasn't fed by a released bird. So that's the first time that's ever happened. And it looks like the female is a daughter of the male who actually pulled off the triple brood. So he was a released bird. So the amount of crazy that we're dealing with on the 21st year, and I don't know if it's literally 20 or not, but in the 21st year, it's just kind of crazy and makes you realize that when you study one nest or one field season, how much you still have to
Don't
learn.
know. Yeah. Back to food content, if you don't mind.
Go
I
for
know
it.
they can't eat in captivity what they eat in the wild, but are there certain content things that are important?
yeah, there's something I want to say about that. So I've been a parrot owner for my whole life. It's something that I've learned from studying them in the wild is that like diversity in food items is really important. So not offering them the same thing every single day, even if you
Right.
just have three different things to offer, just switch the
Exactly.
combinations, even switch the position of the plates, the foraging toys that they
Right.
have in the cages, the time in which you offer the food. They like routine, but in general, they spend pretty much like if they're awake 12 hours per day in the rainforest, they're gonna be foraging at least half of that time. And
Right.
we cannot do that when we have them in our houses, right? So
Right.
whatever you can do to try to stimulate foraging, food like diet diversity, that's gonna be a good
Right.
thing for them.
Variety. We agree. But I mean, are you finding there's a lot of vitamin A, a lot of flowers, a lot? I mean, what are you finding in terms of
So
what they
I
eat?
hate to use the word seed.
Right.
So I
It's
try
good
not.
seed. Yeah.
Right, but the problem is it's tree seeds. So it's not grass seeds, it's not um like sunflower seeds or other
Right.
daisy type seeds. These are the reproductive parts of rainforest trees. So it really is thinking more about things like beans.
Mm.
I don't like to use the word nuts because nuts cause
We
trouble
get carried away. Yes, we do.
get have problems, but on other sorts of tree seeds. And actually, when they eat Brazil nuts in the wild, they're usually eating unripe Brazil nuts.
Hmm.
So ones that haven't laid down all of that fat yet. So
Yeah,
it's
we
almost
watch the
like,
greenwings eating the mango seeds when they're very young plants and the
right,
seed is soft and
right.
toxic. I remember you used to tell me they eat toxic things all the time. Yeah.
Yep.
They
So they're
do.
eating things that we couldn't and shouldn't. It's almost like thinking about them eating, and I'm not saying that this is a dietary item that should become a major part, but it's like thinking about them eating young acorns.
Hmm.
Um, a parrot owner wouldn't confuse young acorns with seed mix.
Right.
But if you think more about things like young acorns or young beech seeds, or maple seeds, that's more like what we're talking about. And one of the things we've been thinking about with owners, and I know that you have some pretty sophisticated owners and caretakers who may not consider themselves owners. But you do also, it can be tough in modern life to create a balanced diet out of a lot of just random stuff you try and buy at the grocery store. Um, so it is important to think about what role do pellets play. And pellets, are they a good base diet for what is that going to provide what you need as a base diet, or are you going to be
Fill
able,
in the gaps, basically. Yeah.
yeah, or are you going to be really able to create a balanced diet? And if you're not comfortable nutritionally balancing a diet, providing a basis of pellets can be super helpful. And then, as Gabby
Right.
said, find something they like enough that you can wrap up that's going to contribute well to the nutrition and make them work for it. And in an ideal world, and I haven't been able to pull it off because we don't work with that many captive birds, but can you wrap up things like pellets and get it so that they're foraging even for their base diet? And
Oh
that's when
yeah,
you're
for
in a
sure.
that's when
Absolutely.
you're in a position where they really have to work for it.
But do
Where
you find their food in the wild is like calcium rich or vitamin A rich, or is there
so
any particular aspect of it that you would say is
yeah,
that they're most drawn to or that they need the most? Of course, their
so
environment's different.
unfortunately, when we think about the real big draws, is a lot of the big draws are the same big draws that we want. I mean, they go for a high fat diet. And the problem there is that we really have these birds flying around a lot.
Yeah, they're busy, busy, busy.
I
They're burning
mean,
those calories,
so
right?
let me see if I can share this real quick.
So they're going for high fat, and that's a lot of omegas in there too, which is something deficient in a lot of captive parrot diet.
Correct. So when we look at it at a very base level, um, when we look at what the young they were feeding their young, compared to hand feeding formulas, there are certainly a bunch of differences in there. This was some work by my grad student Juan Cornejo. Um, and here, way over here, so let's see, this is crude protein from 0 to 100, carbohydrate 0 to 100, and crude fat. You look out at the pine seeds that a thick-billed parrot will eat, you're looking at about 60% fat over here. Um, and crude protein is closer to like 30%.
Mm,
Um, So yeah, 30%, 60%, and then oh, I'm reading it wrong. Bloody hell.
yeah, it's kind of an intriguing.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. So let's see. So between 20 and 30 there. Here it is. And only about 15% carbs. So your carbs are coming down through here. 15% carbs, about 30%, 25% protein, but it's at somewhere around 60% fat. And it's pretty crazy what some of these birds are feeding their chicks. And then when you look at all the other species, so we have scarlet macaws, Amazons, two species of Amazons, two species of macaws, they all cluster in right about the same area with about 30% fat, 20% protein, and about the remaining 40 to 50% carbs. So that's kind of where they're balancing out. And the problem that I always talk about when I'm talking about wild and captive parrot diets is that you have this problem of feeding a 40-year-old couch potato versus a 20-year-old athlete. You shouldn't feed those if they're humans the same way. And how do we think about a macaw that may be flying 10 kilometers just so when they're feeding chicks, early morning foraging flight will be 4 to 5 to 10 kilometers. And then we've had macaws fly a single flight. We suspect single flights of up to 120, 150 kilometers.
The
What you
scarlets, is that who
Scarlet
you
and blue and golds
and Bogle? Uh-huh.
both ended up right at about the biggest movements we suspected were 150. And we think that a blue and gold went out over a couple months, made it 150 kilometers away, but then went home, checked his nest, hung out for a couple hour a day or two, and then flew right back out to the 150 kilometers away spot. So over a week, probably flew a minimum of 300 kilometers. Uh,
Amazing. Where
and
do they
that's
get their omega 3s? What food
uh,
gives them omega 3s? Don't they need that just like our guys
Yeah,
do?
so I don't remember offhand the dietary items, but they do eat a reasonable number of palm nuts.
Nuts.
So a lot of their oils are palm, and I can send you the stuff from Juan's work. But what he was finding is that when you want to change the fatty acid balances, there are only certain oils that'll work. And a lot of them are kind of the palm oils, and it's hard to match even in a formulated diet. It's hard to get super close. But a lot of
Yeah.
these seeds are kind of nutty and have quite a bit of your fatty acids, your I mean your
Omegas.
yeah,
That's why
your
it's so important to add omegas in our captive diets because they don't.
yeah, and that's one that I'd have to look more closely at
Yeah.
before I tried to speak authoritatively on for certain. But
Well, anything else about food that you think we should know?
let's see.
Yeah, I want to add something. Then, besides that huge amount of exercise that the wild parrots, macaws do, they actually are outside. So the elements, like imagine if it's raining on you for 6 hours and then it's nighttime and you are shaking and you are really cold. So all the fat that those like seeds that you're eating, you're actually eating them up really quickly. And that's something that we don't provide to our pets in our
Mhm.
house or
Right,
in the conditions that we have them here.
right.
So
That's a really good point.
so
Yeah,
that's really important too. So I hate when my parrot is cold and I feel her little feet is cold, but actually it's a good way to burn those calories
mm-hmm.
too.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, and you can actually, especially when we are in the clay lake observations in front of the cliff and it's raining, the poor things are like dumb, like just super wet.
Right,
And you can see them shaking. They're like so
yeah,
they're eating all that fat there.
right,
So yeah, and then the other thing that I want to add is that just remember when they are seed eaters, but they are not the seeds that we have in our head.
right.
So
They're
like
plants that are coming to life. They're not like Walmart seed that you buy in the package that has no
Oh
nutrient.
no, but the whole taxonomy, and that's what I was trying to get
Yeah,
at, the taxonomy of the plants that are in your in a seed mix are nothing like, and they're not
nothing.
nutritionally similar, and they're not in any way or shape. So what was one of the most interesting things to me was when I was in Australia, I got the chance to walk around outside with Joseph Forshaw, the guy who wrote Parrots of the World. But
Mm,
he also had like 10 different cages of parrots in his house when I was there. And as we're walking around, he found a pyracantha bush, the bright orange, and it's spiny and nasty. And he's like, "Oh, this is great." And he goes and he gets a pair of clippers and he cuts a big pyracantha branch because it was covered with orange berries. He got home and he just threw it on top of the cage of his parrots, and they all came up and started eating it. And what was incredible there was the Australians have this mentality because there's so many parrots right outside their house. If they see a parrot eating that plant in their yard, they just bring it in and give it to their birds. Whereas the US owners have this toxic plant mentality
right,
so driven into them that it's like if I give them a plant, now we're not talking about spraying with pesticides, which is a
right.
different issue, but it's like if I give them this plant, I have to just check to
Yeah,
the end of the
sterilize
world
it, put it in
to
the
make
oven. Yeah,
sure that
yeah,
it isn't
right,
in one of these prohibited lists.
right.
And I just really wonder if we were to take young oak branches or other things with some fruit on them and brought them in, how much trouble would we cause? And my guess is we probably wouldn't cause as much trouble as people
I
think.
agree. Rosemary Lowe is always saying that too. She's all about, walking down the path where she lives in England and cutting things and bringing them back to her birds. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for foraging and for health. Yeah.
Right. The foraging and just the act of chewing on a leaf
Right.
and letting
A
it
little bit of
fall.
bark, a little bit of leaves, a little bit. Yeah. All good
Yeah,
stuff.
because one of the things that I could also share, let's see there, is how much bark these birds feed their chicks. Um,
A
because
fair amount, right?
yeah, there's bark if you I don't know if you can see my mouse, but all of these black chunks in here are woody growth of trees.
And
Um,
that's come out in their droppings or,
This is crop. So
oh, it's
that's
in their
actually
crop.
a
That
crop
makes sense.
sample from a baby, and you can see basically, I think these are Croton genus beans. Um, and this is a sapium, and then there's some other really kind of broad bean-like nutty bits. But again, that's what these birds were, scarlet macaws were feeding their chicks, probably 30, 40-day old chicks.
And what do you
Um,
think the purpose of eating the bark was for them?
We're
Minerals?
still trying to figure that out. We have some funding to try and get some analyses done, and we're trying to get those done as we speak.
Another good thing to support the Macaw Society with.
There you go. So we're looking at, because the diet is so chunky like that, we don't think it's just fiber, but we'll see if that comes out as something important. So it could be fiber. And we also think, because there's a lot of evaporation at the surface of the tree, we think that there are quite a few minerals that probably concentrate in bark. So we're thinking minerals. It's
Is
not
their gizzard fully functioning when they're that young, or do they need some help moving things through their system?
Well, the issue is when you hand feed these birds, they survive on something that's like grits, basically mush, with very little structure to it in most commercial hand feeding diets, and they do okay. I mean, it's not ideal. So why would you need to add just fiber to something that's already this chunky? I can't, to me, I'd almost go in the opposite direction. I'd try and lubricate it and and there's no fruit pulp in it. They just don't, they're not giving fruit pulp to their
Mm.
babies hardly at all. And if they eat a fruity plant, they're cutting through the outside part, getting to these seed bits, feeding, like you said, mango seeds
Yeah,
instead of
right.
mango.
Yeah. Yeah, the
Uh,
green wings were just going after that. But it
yeah, and
was
I've seen them.
real smushy.
I've
Yeah.
seen them cut through beautiful papaya and just be eating papaya seeds
Yeah.
and ignoring the papaya itself.
Right.
So,
Okay. How about the other cool project you're working on right now, which is facial recognition in
oh
green wings,
wow.
of course, which
Which of course, greenwing.
I
So
have no bias. Yeah.
we have a, yeah, hey, we should use that photo that's behind you.
That's from
Um,
Brazil. I
yeah,
think you were
well,
there when we took that photo, actually.
actually, I didn't think about that.
This is from the sinkhole.
Right, we should get some photos from there actually,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
what we're doing is, it's a guy out of the UK who's kind of taking the lead on it. And what he's doing is he's using some commercially available software that is known for picking up patterns, and it's not designed for macaws, it's not designed for human fingerprints, but it just kind of matches patterns and it looks for the same pattern repeated. And what he did was he got a bunch of photos from the clay licks in Peru and has run them through this system. He should be finishing up this spring the first paper on it. And what we're trying to do, first, we're looking at green wings, and if we get it to work, it should allow us to estimate um, kind of population sizes, because you can use the traditional mark and recapture method, which traditionally you would catch an animal, you would put a band on it, you'd release it, and you keep doing that over and over again. And then what percentage of the individuals you see are actually banded. And you can use math to figure out how big your whole population is. If you know you've got 20% of them are banded, and this is how often we see everybody, you can estimate that, okay, there's 500 birds flying around out there. But with this facial recognition, you just keep sampling individuals, and how many of them are the same as the previous ones, how many of them are new. And
And
in
you
that
wouldn't even
way,
have to band them maybe at some point.
exactly, right, right.
Wouldn't that be
With the facial,
wonderful?
they're already banded. They already have their
Yeah, they have their
identification.
fingerprint.
Now
Yeah.
it's like a QR code. They've got a
Yeah.
QR code on their face.
Yeah.
Uh, but the
And
problem is, go ahead, Gabby, go.
that would be so useful because we wouldn't even need the genetics to know that the same female is using the same
Right.
cavity. You
Right.
just need a good set of pictures, and
Right.
that's it.
But
It's
the
wonderful. It's a
but
great idea.
the problem we have is that nobody's ever shown any data that they actually have unique face patterns.
We've been
So
told that, but we don't have any
and we've
data,
been
like you
told
said.
that for
Yeah. Yeah.
decades, literally for
Right.
decades.
Right.
And so the guy's ready to had his data from last year, and he's like, yeah, and they're all there. And I looked at him, I said, every single photo you took from that same clay lick could be the same bird, or it could be a different bird, and you have no way of knowing. So nobody's ever tried to get the data to say, in fact, it doesn't misidentify. So what I've asked Phoenix Landing and some other collaborators to help with is send us photos of faces of birds that aren't at clay licks in Peru. So the bird in your home, there's no way that that bird was in a clay lick in Peru. So we can get, if his identification program says that Phoenix was actually seen at the Clay Lake. Either he's immortal and has been reincarnated in Peru, which maybe we'd
He
have to
knows
Or
deal
he
the
with
knows how
that,
to
sinkhole. We're going
teleport.
back to the sinkhole. Just throw us
or
both overboard. Yeah.
right, or if and or if we have a bird from a sinkhole, which
Yeah.
actually we should go through your photos and pull out some good ones, because if those sinkhole birds are supposedly showing up in Peru, that's a lie. So
Yeah.
what
We have
we
a lot of
need
those, Gaby.
is
Yeah.
that the help of you guys to make sure that when they say it really is unique, that in fact
Yeah.
it is.
I'm sure
And
Bergson at the sinkhole would love to help with that. If you asked him to just start taking lots of pictures, he'd probably
Cool.
be, yeah.
Yeah, and even if we just had a few from what you guys have done, but yes, we could certainly
Yeah.
reach out to him as well.
Yeah. He would love that. Yeah.
So
So what do you think is the most important thing you have researched, studied, and figured out over your careers?
well, I'm on a new bend. I'm on a new, which is what do we do with all these poor Amazon parrots in Latin America that have been taken out of the illegal trade and now they're stuck for life in a cage.
Yeah.
And I've made a promise to some birds and some people that I want to help make that process better. Um, how to get it so more birds can be released and how to get it so they do better once they're released. And from a somewhat utilitarian perspective, say, be able to tell those who are working in rehabilitation, if you release a bird that's like this, these are its chances of doing okay out in the wild. So that's
There
one
are
of
some
the
pretty good programs. I mean, and everybody's kind of learning from each other, but that doesn't mean it's always successful.
well, the part of the problem was that before we got excited about it, they weren't always learning from each other as much as they could, because a lot of them were saying, I feel like I'm stuck in the end of the world by myself, figuring out all these problems. And that's why we've created our other list, which is the Parrot Release Network, in
Mhm.
which we help facilitate communications among people who are often the ones in the middle of Belize, the others in southeastern Peru, one's in so far in Costa Rica, she's almost into Panama. And now all those people can quickly ask
Wonderful.
questions and
It's a
answer.
great thing you've done that way. Yeah.
And then the other side of it is we try and get this do the new research to say how can we do it better? So we've got people doing their trying things out and then reporting back, which is somewhat different than actually doing the scientific experiments and taking the trouble of writing it up as a scientific document. So that's
Yeah.
kind of those are the different aspects of what I'm trying to really help push forward right now to help get more of these birds out of captivity and back into a
Yeah.
better welfare place, and when possible to contribute to conservation as well.
What Amazon in particular are you talking about? Just all kinds of Amazon.
So I right now I'm interested in genus Amazona
Mhm.
because they seem to be having the same damn problems, whether you're in yellow-naped in
All the
Costa
species.
Rica,
Mhm. Yeah.
yellow-crowned, turquoise-fronted or
yeah, the
blue-fronted.
situation is that the Amazons are super popular in Latin America. So they learn how to talk and everybody wants an
Yeah.
Amazon parrot. And the thing is that along the decades, the governments from the different countries, they are trying to implement confiscations and different regulations to try to avoid the harvesting them from the wild. But then you have this huge amount of individuals that are saturating the rescue centers. And it's
Right.
kind of like blocking the whole change because there's no more place to put them. So
Right.
the government is not going to confiscate. So the ones that are harvesting are just going to have a free market to keep doing it. And it gets so tricky. And then you cannot release them, because they don't know how to survive.
Right.
And then there's a whole strategy, if you want to say like that you just, what is the word, euthanasia done?
Euthanasia.
So you just pretty much kill them. And it's like, but yeah, but many of those species are actually in danger. So you cannot erase them because we don't have more. So
Right.
and it's so complicated because it's so much related to humans, like we are deciding in every single step. And we don't get along with each other in many different things. like just in our area, the biologists, we don't get along that well with the vets. We are pretty much in different fields and we need to collide and work together to try to. That was the main lessons from the whole foster chick program that we had. Like pretty much we were not in agreement in any decision that we took, but we needed to find a common ground to try to move forward. And for me, like the biggest lesson is that somehow we need to learn to move forward, even though we don't think the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and even if they pass a law, that doesn't mean it gets enforced or that the
Mm-hmm.
bird actually
Right.
find a place.
Or that they pass a law. So apparently in Colombia, if a parrot speaks human words, it's considered unreleasable.
That's terrible.
So what we're doing is we've got some data now that haven't been published yet, but we're looking to publish that show, hey, birds that spoke before release did just as well post-release as others. And I know we know it's true, but I don't know if we've got the data for it, that over time they just stop using human words because other parrots don't respond to them, and they don't need humans as their social companions anymore.
Right.
And this is what Gaby was saying about kind of gobbing up the system. So when authorities enforce the laws, they confiscate animals. The authorities pass the animals to rehabilitation centers, and then the rehabilitation centers often will release the animals. But if the rescue centers don't release, they fill to capacity. If the rescue centers are full, they don't accept the animals, and the authorities don't have any place to put them. And if the authorities don't have a place to put the animals, they may not confiscate and enforce the laws. So you end up where parrot release actually becomes an important part of this kind of circular system that's going on. And then most scientists don't want to hear the idea of a welfare release, where we think that these birds, if they're going to rot in captivity in rescue centers where there's just more and more birds per cage, their quality of life just keeps going down. And can quality of life be improved through releases? And I don't know the answer to that.
It's the same thing in captivity. It's why I don't like the concept of sanctuaries, because most of them are not sustainable and they don't have financial backing, and the people get old and can't take care of them anymore. Yeah, it happens in captivity. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, but in Latin America, we have this option of release.
Yes.
And that's why I've kind of gotten into this
Helping
idea
people. That's
there.
great.
And because I talked to some of my collaborators in Brazil were saying, yeah, how many blue-fronted Amazons do you want to work with for release? I'm like, I don't know. How many do you have? It says, we couldn't work with this many, but we could get up to 200, 300, 400 a year to work with. My buddy in Colombia said, yeah, the government just called me up and they're trying to give me a couple special macaws, but they asked if I wanted any of these other ones, and the list was like 150 birds long. And which ones do you want or not? Because they just don't have a place to put them. And Colombia is in a really weird position because right now, as far as I understand, it's still technically illegal to release them back to the wild. But my buddy who's working in that system has an agreement where he's allowed to keep them in semi-captivity. And what that means is he has to maintain feeders and he has to, quote, keep them coming back to feeders, because in that
the doors are open. Yeah.
Right. They're not technically fully free. And the government he's doing such a great job. It's Fundación Loros. And he's just not letting the government's like, we have to find a loophole so you can do this because it really works great. So they've kind of manufactured this loophole, and that's why he keeps up feeders.
Of course, there's less and less space to release the birds to as well, as the humans continue to encroach with agriculture.
Well, it depends. There's still a lot. The issue is if you have human hostile landscapes, meaning where they're going to shoot the birds or capture them, then it's a problem. But in areas where he's doing this for certain is educating people about letting the parrots be. There's a lot of areas that have very low population densities of parrots that can support them biologically. Because when we think about it, they survive in cities. I mean, There
Right.
are healthy populations of Amazons in the lower Rio Grande Valley. They're in Los Angeles. So they don't need a lot of species, not all, don't need that much out of the environment. They need to stop being
Coach.
captured.
Yeah.
They need
Yeah.
to, and so he's created this niche in which this little town right next to him, the peer pressure is that we need to let these birds be, and let them fly around. So, and like even in the coast of Costa Rica, there are scarlet macaws nesting right over the little towns, and it's really fragmented. The habitat's not great, but scarlet macaws are going crazy, and there are even yellowknapes flying around with them as well. So,
It's like Neva and Campo Grande, and
right, right.
and
So,
when
so
we were
when
there last year, there was a man who had planted a tree like 25 years ago, and it finally got high enough to make a nest. And we were there, and he came out and he just cried because he finally got to see the bird that he'd been planning so long to provide a habitat for in the middle of a big million-person city.
right,
It's
so I don't think
fabulous.
I think that we can have a world full of parrots. Well, in the correct countries, although in some of our cities too. But we can have a world full of parrots once we stop taking them out of the wild
Yeah.
and messing with them. So that is the hope. And I think that putting these birds back, the cool thing is the best place to release these birds is often where they aren't right now, and help create new populations, even of common species, and get people to have more direct interactions with them. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of potential positives. So that's one of the things that we're working on.
That's fantastic. Well, I hope everybody here today looks up the Macaw Society and considers putting that on your charitable donation list because you do great work. And everybody wants to know, not everybody, but there's been some requests about how do we get this shirt you guys are wearing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we
We
Are
need
they
to do something
viable?
about it. Right? Right now, it's for the people that comes to help us in the
Uh-huh.
field. So
That
consider
makes
that.
sense. Oh,
But let us think about how to make it available here, because actually,
can make
maybe
money.
one of the festivals, though, we can take a bunch of them.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
start a membership program there like we have where the shirt is part of it.
or partner with Phoenix Landing, they can help us out.
We're glad to help. Always glad to collaborate.
And
Yes.
so just remember to promote the volunteer program. So if you are considering getting some experience in the field, if you like to be outside, if you like bird watching, you have these 2-3 weeks to just go to the rainforest and learn what we are doing there. So we work with volunteers year round. Macaw breeding season is pretty much Christmas time. So it's December, January, February, March. The rest of the year, we do foraging walks. We monitor the clay leak every month during the year. And the clay leak show is like, it's
It's
unbelievable.
amazing.
It's
Yeah,
massive.
it
Like
is.
all the sounds, all the colors is something that you are not going to see. It's
Where
like
can
so
they go,
wonderful.
Gabby, to get more information about how to be a volunteer? Oh, there you go. Don's going to show us.
Yep, there it is. And I think we have a volunteer there, Tambopata, Peru.
Uh,
Volunteer fact, Gabby's got a great job, done a great job with creating ways for getting people down. And as she said, it can be a couple weeks or a couple months. Any of those work. So
yeah, we
So
have different programs for residents, for interns, for just 2 weeks. Volunteers that just want to go and help with specific things.
but since you're not working out of the research center anymore, where do you work out of in Tampapata?
There is a new field station that the
And
government has put on. Is down the lodge to 1 hour and a half downriver, just in the border of the natural reserve, the Tambopata National Reserve.
okay.
And that's our base. We have a set of trails around that we monitor for foraging walks. And now the clay leak, the big clay leak that you visit back in time,
El
is gone.
Chunco, I think it is. Is that the one?
Yeah, there's
Chuncho has also changed. We went
uh-huh.
from Colorado, the big one up at the lodge, to Chuncho. That one's now changed. We're at Chuncho
Wow.
2. We're at Ocho Gallinas. It turns out there's a whole different can of worms, but they evolve in the landscape and it's totally confusing.
That river just continues to change everything,
Yes,
doesn't
so
it?
Yeah.
right now, actually, conveniently, the most active and biggest clay leak now is 40 minutes from the field station, and we monitor the Colorado, the 5 clay leaks in total, and the foraging walks. Then we go upriver for for expeditions in the rainforest to monitor the tree plots that we have, and yeah, it's a neat experience.
But the
Our young,
lodging there is not for people to visit like we used to at the research center. It's only for workers, basically.
At this
it's
point, yes.
Yeah.
yeah, it's a field station. Yes, it's
As
a
you know,
field
we're always
station.
looking to create those eco tours. And for those of you interested in going to Brazil, Dawn is the one that helped us develop our first tour there. So another one
Yeah.
coming up this fall and potentially Guyana. So anybody interested in going somewhere this year, let us know.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
our way of helping conservation. So
Yes, yes, and when you see them in the wild, you will get all what we are
it changes
saying.
everything, doesn't it?
It
Yeah.
changes everything, like that diversity in diet that we talk. Yeah, you will see. Yeah, that is why
Yeah.
when you leave it outside in the like to feel the elements, it's like yeah, that is why. I
Right.
guess yeah.
And it's like potato chips. You can't do just one. You have to keep going back because it's just so magical. Yeah, I have to get my fix. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
reinvigorates me to come back and deal with the captive parent question. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you guys do great work and you're so generous for all you do to help so many people. And the networks you formed are invaluable. I mean, I think that's going to be one of the highlights of your successes. So bringing
Yeah,
people
thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you for the invitation. We really like to talk with you guys.
Likewise. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we just want to be able to be together again sometime. I think it was 2018 was the last time we were able to go to Tambopata. So,
Yeah,
and then
it
we
has
met Don in
it
Costa
has
Rica a few years ago. So, yeah.
yeah, the clay leak now, the new clay leak is really interesting because we have
Uh,
studying it so much, we were able to provide advice to the government, and the way that they are managing is different. So it's actually like a show. There's a distance. You cannot do specific things to avoid get them scared. And now the macaws stay for hours, like hours and hours and hours, and they
yeah,
are just
when I
there.
was there a year and a half ago, it was horrible. The tourists were going crazy. They were running all over the place. The birds were getting scared. So I freaked out. We had somebody in the crew taking extra data. We pushed on the government. And a year later, when we went back, the birds were just not scared at all. We had large macaws on the clay lick from about 7:30 a.m. till about 3:30 p.m. with no breaks. It was so ridiculous. The first day I was there, I turned to my poor grad student. I said, dude, I need you to stay all morning. I know you just came for an hour and a half, but we'll pick you up at 2 in the afternoon. Is that okay? He's like, I guess so.
Happy
Uh,
place. Yeah.
but
Yeah, it was.
the
Yeah,
lilac is incredible.
it's interesting. The whole it's very. What is that? Satisfying to see. So we had a grad student at the beginning of the year. He studied pretty much impact in clay leaks, and he was able. It was part of his master's dissertation, so he was able to provide so much good information that now the activity keeps rolling, even though that clay leak receives 50 people, 60 people, 80 people per day. So since like we were able to actually help to do that, and that feels really, really good. So
And you
that
still
much,
have Amazons and Pioneers and other things that also go to the clay lick. We have a
yeah,
Muley Amazon in the adoption center right now. And I think about you guys all the time because they were so
yeah,
prevalent on the clay lick and they're so
yeah,
big.
yeah.
Yeah.
15 species in the clay leak.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a
so
great thing. Yeah,
it's a great show.
it is. Well, anything else you want to leave people with today? Things they can do to help or,
Come and join us,
yeah,
or make a donation if you
donate.
can.
And
Yeah.
follow us in. We are pretty intense in Facebook. I just started in Instagram, and my daughter now, our daughter is now 13, and she's offering to help us do something in TikTok. That's too much for me, but seems like she's willing to help. So follow us in Facebook. I try to update it every week. So you are going to have a good idea what we are doing, our publications. We have a YouTube channel. I try to keep up putting the talks that we give in different events. So if you just go and check the talks, you're going to learn a lot about what we do and all the data and the difficult wording when we talk in scientific language. But we try to put everything there available so people can just go and check and learn a little bit about parrots and macaws and hopefully help the ones that they have in their
Yes.
houses or in the centers.
Yes. Yes. We need to help parrots, captive and wild, for sure. They're all important. Well, you guys are on the cutting edge as usual for the wild population, and hopefully you'll keep doing that for many years, decades to come. We're counting on you.
Y gracias a la gente de
Mhm.
Forum Citocorum que han podido venir de América Latina. He reconocido varios nombres. Gracias. Thanks to all.
Yes, we have some people here from many parts of the world, actually. So that's great. And I'm sure that this recording will be watched later and hopefully continue to garner more support for all your efforts. So thank you.
Yes, where can we find the recording?
I'll try to get it up in just a little while, and I'll make sure you have a link. And then it goes on our website. So assuming it's okay with you all that we do post the recording,
Yep.
of course.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
So we wanna share in the forum Citacorum too. So
Okay.
for the people
Fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for doing this with us. We appreciate that and love to collaborate as always. So,
Thanks
Dawn.
so much.
Okay. Thank you. I know you have to get back to daughters and work and everything else. So thank you
Take
for
care.
your generosity of so much time today. And it was so interesting. So grateful, as always. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
care.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.